Hi, I'm Des Merrill, broker associate for Carr in Northeast Florida, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about one of the groups that I'm in. It's called the Healthcare Resource Partners, founded several years ago by Marty Goldmans here in Jacksonville. He's with Advantage Technologies. And the purpose of this group was to bring education from a business perspective to our doctors, dentists, and veterinarians. We've been doing it for a couple of years, and I've recently started recording these videos. So I thought I would share this one with you. Our speaker is Dan Mayville. He's the founder of Top Built Teams, and it's a fantastic concept. Everybody knows about personality types, but Top Built Teams takes it an extra step, not just identifying the personality type, but correlating that to the position and the practice that you have available and how that specific personality type works with the requirements for that position. So you'll learn things like which positions in your practice make money, save money, and keep everything running smoothly, and how the wrong hire slowly drains profitability, productivity, and your energy. He'll teach you how to hire people who are naturally wired for the work you need done and how to spend your time with patients, not solving employee problems. They use what's called a culture index to hire better, manage better, and get more from the team you already have. So you don't have any questions about, is this the right person? They've already gone through a gamut of questions and testing to determine that their personality type is best suited for what position you have available. So I hope you'll join us in listening to this. Let me know what you think.
Thank you very much. It occurs to me, Brandon, that I think I even stole the formatting of my slides, was a deck that we collaborated on somewhere else. So yeah, thank you for that. So this is just the snapshot of logos that kind of describes my journey start to finish. I've spent time in operations management. The biggest swatch of my career has been in human capital management, always looking at how do we leverage data to make better decisions about people. And so what I thought I would talk about today is, when I tell people that I help put right people, right seats, what does that really look like? What does that really feel like? What's that really mean? And so I thought today, rather than kind of explain to you the science of it, necessarily not a good use of your time, I would kind of focus more on just a couple of examples. What does it look like when I work with a client? And my elevator pitch is that I surround business owners with the people they need to be successful. It's super simple. This is totally what drives my wife nuts about me. Is like, it's a simple sentence, but for me, it's way more complex, because what it means to surround you depends on who you are. How do you operate? How do you think? And so I thought I would take a different kind of approach today and give you two examples. First of all, the tool that I use primarily is Culture Index. Is anybody familiar with Culture Index? Ever heard of it? Okay. It's a 2-question survey. It'll take you 8 minutes to complete, and we'll get into the details as they become relevant. But for me, Culture Index is a tool that I can look at these 4 dots and describe the person that way. That I know how they manage risk, I know how they have a need to be in control, and then also equally important, I know what their appetite is or their requirement is for social validation. And that kind of, those 3 psychological needs helps us understand how people work and how they operate. And you'll see that come through. There's no test at the end, so don't struggle on really getting the competencies of it. But I have 2 different business owners who are wired incredibly differently. One is, and both of these are active clients. But when I look at their dots and I would describe them, this first one is he. Describe him as a detail-oriented leader who strives for accuracy, relies on established structures, and is naturally avoiding confrontation. So as you think about this person being handed to you to be your business partner, what are the concerns you have when you think about how this person is wired? Detail-oriented might be good for you, right? They're going to be your follow-up person to do all of that. Relies on established structures. If that's the business owner and that's how they're wired, makes me a little nervous that they need structure when I expect them to bring structure, right? So when I meet people and I talk to them and I understand a little bit more about them, I start to kind of say, what are going to be my challenges? What does this person need in order for them to be successful? Business owners come in all shapes and sizes, right? And so it doesn't change when we start to look at how they're wired. But I know my requirement is going to be to find somebody that has the ability to be the visionary, to use an EOS word, the one that's going to put wind in the sails, that this person is going to be focused on not hitting trees, not running off the road, and is going to be okay coasting. And that's not how you grow a business, right? So I already know I need to bring in somebody that I would describe to that person as an agitator. I'm going to bring in an agitator. You're not going to love them, but they're going to put wind in your sails, and your boat's going to go faster than you thought it could. The fact that the leader of the business doesn't like to hold people accountable, that's not a problem, right? You don't have to be that person, but you need that person in your business. And if it's not you, I've got to figure out who it is and how to bring that person in to do that. And then this guy is, again, this one is a gentleman, the next one's a woman. They're driven to avoid mistakes, which means they're going to be risk averse. We're never going to grow our business if we're not willing to take some risks. So that's this person. The second person is, if you'll just indulge me, think about these for today's conversation as stick figures. And this is that person's stick figure, this is that person's stick figure. That's enough for you to look at it and say, two totally different people, right? I also tell people, think of the red as the head, the green as the feet. So this has definitely got a hold my beer kind of a shape to it, right? And this has got a, no, you've got to convince me kind of a orientation, right? But this person, assertive, quick-paced, definitely thrives on taking risks, right? Independent problem solving. So you think about all of these things. Now you start to look at these and you're like, wait a minute, independent problem solver? Is he going to be able to lead a team? Is he going to inspire other people to, or she? Does she inspire other people to follow her? The quick-paced, assertive, risk-taking could sound prickly, right? So, these are the things that I listen to and start to think about, all right, with her, I need to bring in somebody who's got a higher tolerance for risk. If she's not going to be the manager of risk, somebody has to be. If he's going to be all focused on risk, then I need somebody who's not going to be overly focused on it, right? And that's kind of how I try to work with them. And so each of them to complement their own dynamic, their own shape. So as you look at this, just picture a bell curve distribution with the red as the center line of the bell curve. And this is what I do with those dots. I understand if that red dot, which measures autonomy, your need to be in control of the decisions that are made about you and your destiny at all times. These are team people. These are, I absolutely have to be in control of my destiny people, right? And so we measure autonomy, we measure social ability. How much do I need to be socially validated? How much do I depend on people for energy in my world? How much am I much more inward thinking and analytical type, right? But it's these are the attributes that we're measuring. And this is kind of how at the simplest level, this is how I start to segment where you fit in on this. We talked about this, avoids risk, detail orientation, dislikes details, the delegate. These were in my two personalities. My woman-owned business is way over here. My man, the male gentleman, he's over here. So it's finding that mix. Does that make sense? I don't want to oversimplify, but we don't have to get into the deep details of it. So when I think about what they need, right, it's how do I correct for their deficiencies? I need somebody that will hold accountability. I need somebody to balance the red and the green is really what I'm trying to balance there. And then with the other person, what I need is somebody who can run their speed. because this person talks in bullets, this person does the and keeps on going, does not live in detail orientations. I want to build a plane, let's do it. Wait, I've got 1,200 questions. No, let's just build it, right? Builds the plane while he's flying. So I need somebody who can keep up with that speed, but then has the ability to take the big, hairy, audacious goals and bring them down to a tactical level. How do we actually do the 12 crazy things you said we're going to do this year? That's the kind of person that I need to bring. And then how do I bring the follow through and accountability, because this person has zero accountability, right? Just going to do and see how things work out. So from my perspective, you can now see how this graph and this graph, that this one seems to be the one that's the in-between. That this is the right person that brings the structure. They need structure. This person drives structure. Strategic, this person is nothing but strategy. Big, crazy ideas every single day. And this is the person that says, all right, I get them. Now let's take a step back. I heard you want to build a plane. I'm all in. I'll get them to start building a plane. Can I just ask one question as we walk over to start building? How big's the plane going to be? And and this is the person that starts to slow this person down. So by the time they get to the production to build the plane, she realized, yeah, bad idea. Instead of a plane, how about we do this, right? But this is that profile that helps balance. Ironically, coincidentally, it's also the same person that brings this kind of visionary, aspirational thinking. This person is an agitator for that person, except they both agree that things have to be done right. So we have a compatible. We both agree we can't fail. But this person's going to say, I think we can do more than 5% growth next year. I think we can do 30%. We just need to talk about that. And so that's kind of in my mind when I meet owners and businesses and I really understand how they're wired, how I start to think about what does the rest of the team need to look like if your business is actually going to go somewhere, grow somewhere, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. You can cut in if you're like, no, that was gibberish. I don't understand that at all. I mean, I'll take feedback. Brandon knows I'm good on my feet. So these are my conversations. When I talk to business owners at networking events, what are you focused on for the second half of the year? How did you do first half of the year? Are you ahead, on target, or behind? Right? Like I'm always probing for what are you focused on? What's your biggest worry for the rest of this year? Trying to understand that. And these are kind of the conversations that, I'm 150 behind on my revenue growth goals. Okay. Good. So what are you doing about that? Why do you think that is? Do you have the processes in place? I'm trying to, in my mind, think about, do I have a process conversation or do I have a people conversation? And the whole time, I'm figuring out where these dots come into the problem. If they have a revenue growth problem, that's my autonomy and my risk. If we're having a net margin, like my revenue's growing, but my net profits aren't growing, okay. You got operational issues that you're missing. I start to think about the profiles that you're missing. Ultimately, I'm trying to figure out which one of my profiles is going to be the conversation. Hey, I can help you. I need to know how you're wired so that I can start to think about how you think about scaling, how do you have the right kind of personalities in your organization to define the processes so that your business is scalable. And that's the game that I'm trying to play. I think for me it's a game. Ultimately, I know a well-balanced organization looks like this. 15% of the people in your, ideally, your visionary and your integrator, the CEO, COO, they sit in this visionary category. All day long, they're thinking about what are the aspirational goals we should be chasing. And then these are my gatekeepers. These are my process development people. These are the people that say, this is how we generate the revenue. They create the processes so that I can operate a second location because I can scale their processes. And then in addition to being sales, the social people are the ones that bring the culture, the connective tissue. We like each other. We work well together. You can't have just one of these, because these guys, it'll just be spaghetti at the wall and nothing else. You can't have these because these are the hall monitors. They tell you everything that you said you were going to do that you didn't do. So we also need these people because none of these three really like to talk. So if you don't have the social person in the pantry in the office, then these are the people that bring everybody else together. Okay, so how do I do that, right? Oh,
I'll just try it. One more. Go back.
I'm just.
Okay, thank you.
Move it again.
Yep,
Okay, I'm done. I'm trying to get pictures. So.
you're good.
I'm good.
All
I'm
right.
good. Thank
You got my good side?
you. I do.
Nice. So I thought I'd walk you through just a little bit of the mechanics, like how does this actually operationalize within an organization? When I work with you and you say, all right, we need to hire a new person to be, we'll say a technician, okay? We're gonna hire a technician. All right, write the job description so I know what that person's gonna do. And then I start to leverage Brandon's terminology, write the accountability. What are the roles of this person? How are we gonna measure performance for this person? Tell me what their performance is gonna be measured on. And then the third component is, let's talk about, and it's a survey they take, let's talk about how they need to think, act, and behave in that role in order for them to be successful. And this is the profile. So for this technician, this is the profile that we need. And then what we do is, we only interview people when they take an application for the job and they submit it. We send them a link to the survey and we start to evaluate how good a fit they are for that role. I would argue to my clients, never look at a resume because you'll fall in love. If they don't match the profile, they're never going to be a good fit, even if they've done this job for 100 years. They're not going to be that person in the role for your organization unless they match the profile. So this is Edgar. I also say anything 80 and above, you should interview. And that's when you should focus on does he have the experience, does he have the skills for the job, and do they align to your core values? The gets it, wants it, capacity to do it part of the conversation. So this is what we do to make sure that we've got that right match for the role. Make sense? Simple, straightforward. My thing is I need this to be crayon simple because if this is a home services company and it's an electrician, he doesn't have time to read an 18, 20-page report. He needs to be able to look at this and say, yep or nope, right? It needs to be that obvious.
Dan, I'm going to jump in real quickly and expand on your point out of a recent experience I had with a client. So they are actively trying to hire for a role in their business. And I heard their operations leader make a comment in the session room along the lines of, yeah, we had some really good candidates submit resumes. I had to look through like 80 resumes.
Wow.
And I said, congratulations, you just admitted that you wasted a bunch of your own time.
Oh, wow.
Right? I said, why do you think that's a good thing? And so it was a little bit cheeky and we had a really good conversation about that, but I think what you do in this work is ultimately get them to narrow down their focus, which I think is an obvious thing, but it expands to a broader point of so many of these businesses and the people in them focused on prioritizing busyness over productivity. So,
100%. That's the recurring theme. So this is a quick case study on one of my clients who they've been a client for a year and a half. I meet with them once a month, and every month we look at who they're hiring, and I kind of do the over the shoulder, all right, you're rounding the corner here, you're not following the rules. And then we also talk about year-end performance reviews and mid-year performance reviews, and I'll show you in a minute how we leverage this data to enhance that. But in this particular case, in September, the ops leader said, this guy has done this job for the last 18 years. He was at his prior company 18 years. He's got a ton of experience. He's got a really good personality. And I think he's going to add a lot to the culture of the organization. And I said, okay, so you're also telling me that he's not a good fit for the profile because you're trying to sell me on something. And I just said, hey, Malik, it's on you. I can't make the decisions for you. I'm leading you to the safer water. You make your decisions. And he's like, yeah, I think we're going to do it. This guy, he fits all of the bills. He showed up on day one with custom Nike sneakers that were branded to the company's brand. And that just sold them that this was a company guy. So for them, he was a star performer. I've increased my interactions with this client. I'm their integrator, and we had our first quarter review, and I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm like, wait a minute. You guys, you're only 3 months into the year, and you're $150,000, which is monthly revenue for them. You're a full month behind 3 months in. And so they talked about, yeah, we're working on it. We're talking, yeah, we're trying to figure out why that is. And I said, no, doesn't matter. We'll talk about this in a minute. And because then I went into the ops leader and the CEO's office and said, let's not forget, September, you hired a guy that I told you was a terrible fit, but you guys thought he was a good fit. This is what you needed in the organization, and this is who you hired. And he's cost you in this year $150,000 in revenue, plus the $7,000 you pay him a year. So you're up to almost $200,000 in revenue is what you're willing to give back to keep this guy who's a really great fit for the team. Is that what you want to be your plan for the rest of the year? Now, in the room, we had conversations about why we were falling off on revenue, why weren't we holding people accountable, this is a guy that won't hold people accountable. So luckily for me, this was a Thursday conversation. Friday, he came in and said, yesterday was a really rough day for me. It made me realize I hate my job. I don't want to do this. I don't want to rat out my people. I don't want to be a snitch on my people. I don't want to yell at my people. I just want to be in the locker room with the guys doing a job. I did tell them in September. But luckily, he opted out of the role. Now, the good part of this is, and I did kind of use this to say, you wanted one thing, but you completely agreed to hire something totally different. The story from my perspective has a happy ending. He is now just a mechanic. He's the senior mechanic. He's the SME that all of the young guys can go to when they have questions. But on Monday, they introduced the new operations leader, which is the profile that I told them they needed to hire to. I could have saved them $200,000.
Does this take 5 oil change?
Is this what?
Does this take 5 oil change?
Please introduce me. I'd love to have that conversation.
They definitely need this.
This is Dan's really respectful way of saying, I told you idiots so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But at least he's got stuff to back it up instead of just the wagging of the finger.
Right.
Absolutely.
Science behind it.
Yep.
There's science.
And I usually do have that conversation where I say somebody's not a perfect fit, they're a 65%. And I'll say, my rule is 80%. So as long as you're willing to give up 15% of your time, which is 10 hours in a week, and 15% of the revenue you were expecting from this role, as long as you're willing to give that up, this guy must be that special for you to make that decision. If not, what are you doing?
Maybe he's related.
Always ask if it's a family member so that you don't explain why the wife is a terrible office manager and then realize, ruh-roh, that's the wife. I've learned that.
There's 2 questions to this.
There are 2 questions.
What are the questions?
The first question is, what are the behaviors that most describe who you are? The second question is, what are the behaviors that are required for you to be successful in your role? And we'll come to that second part in a second. But the first part of this conversation is, this is how I put right people in the right seats. Once we get them there, once we bring them on board, now the conversation is, how do you understand who that person is? How do you communicate with them? How do you motivate them to do what you need them to do in that role? Because everybody who's working for you is there to make you more money, right? So these are, again, on that same bell curve distribution. Depending on what their profile is, some of these guys have very distinct ways of communicating with them. I don't want a whole story. I don't care that your mom was sick and because of that you want to change this or that. I just want you, what do you need, right? Some of these people need a lot more information. But we have conversations, and we'll take this example for these two managers with the person that they hired to be their operations leader. Let's talk about what the communication is for this person. When I'm talking to this person to say, how do you communicate with your upline people for this person? When you are communicating to you, this person needs lots of specifics. Tell them exactly. Don't tell them, I've got this, because that person is not able to respond to that. You have to prove that you've got this. Lots of details, specifics, and make sure that you're talking about, like, identify the concern that they're going to have. I know you're really worried about us flying this plane as we're still building it. So am I. Here's my plan. But if you don't define that uncertainty at the beginning, they're listening for you to prove that you know what their concerns are. So these are the things, and then you leave it. So that's my plan. What concerns do you have, right? That's how this person communicates. When this person communicates with this person, a very, very different conversation. You want to build a plane while we're trying to fly it? I got it. And you leave. Because this person gives zero care about the details. I just want to know that you're going to do what I want us to do, right? High-level outcomes, facts and data. I'm going to do this so that we can do that and we can achieve this. Very different communications, right? So I have that conversation when it's a senior leadership person, I have that conversation with them. Let me understand how to communicate effectively with your boss. And then I have the other part of that. When these people need to communicate with that one, succinctly define your concerns. Don't tell them all of your concerns. Don't tell them all of the things that have bothered you today. I woke up today with a crink in my neck and I'm really worried about our quality. The crink in the neck doesn't have anything to do with it, right? Focus on what your specific concerns are. Give them the destination. I want us to fix our quality. Don't tell them how to get there. And then get out of the way, right? Do you have enough information to go on? If they don't, this person will ask. And then my coaching in this dynamic is for them to say, to define the goal so that this person knows what success is. I want to be $5 million in revenue in 5 years. Got it. That's how they want to communicate anyway, but tell them what success looks like. Ask them, what do you need from me? It's the same question. Do you have enough to go on? What do you need from me? But this one is leaning heavily towards the concerns part, right? Because that's how they communicate. This one is, I'm not really planning on being involved. What do you need from me, right? So it speaks to their personalities in there. And then let me know when we're done. This person's going to want updates. This person's just going to want to see $5 million in the bank, right? And then the other part of this, like I said, it's the two questions. So when this is the profile of the job, and that's the person that we hire, most of my clients, it's twice a year. If we're going through major change, we might want to do it more frequently, but we measure that second question, which is the job behavior question. And what we're looking for is for a change in the profiles. I know that this person is changing their behaviors, but it's not the person. So many times you say, I hired Brandon and for 6 months he was a great employee. Something happened and it just didn't work out. We had to let him go. 9 times out of 10, the something that happened is you as a manager weren't paying attention to what they needed. So I can look at this and say, when a person who needs, seeks, and wants direction is moving their autonomy forward, when they are naturally analytical, quiet, reserved, and shy, and they are becoming more social, this is a person that's lacking direction, who's trying to figure it out. You are under-communicating what you need this person to do for you, and this person is struggling and becoming way more creative in the approaches that they take for somebody who really prefers things to be tried and true. So you're not giving this person the direction that they need in order for them to be successful. If you don't fix that, this person's going to leave because That place was crazy. But it's a manager thing. And so part of my monthly conversation is let's look at job behaviors for the last 6 months and figure out what's going on with your employees and where do you need to check in to say, hey, listen, I think you got this job done. Are there things about the role that you don't understand that I need to spend time on to help you have more clarity on what you're supposed to do? You're taking the need to be in control away from somebody who doesn't need to be in control. So we have that conversation, we modify the behaviors. That's it. Does that help? Was that a more helpful way than saying right people, right seats? So those of you who work with your spouse, like it's always good to know how I'm wired. So in my house, this is actually my wife's profile. My red dot sits way up here and my green dot sits back down here. So 2 things. One story for your pure enjoyment. I was in the car with my wife last week and I pitched this whole trip about why we should go to this place at this time and how I think this is a slam dunk. I even looked at hotels and my wife says, hey, that's great. You know, we already booked a trip in that window because you did this 3 weeks ago. And I went, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like I had not remembered that I had already solved this trip. I just got in but the other thing that I do because of where my dots are is I'll say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And I'll lay out my whole plan and then I'll look at her and go, what am I missing? And because she keeps me from hitting trees, right? So anyway.
Have there been businesses that you've gone into? For example, have 2 owners. I assume you have them do the profile.
Absolutely.
And when you're looking at them, you say to yourself, well, I don't know how they've even made it this far. It's not a fit, or you're looking at the entire organization, and you're seeing where there's just people that don't fit into their jobs. Are you then sitting down with, first example, the 2 owners, but then on an overall broader scale, looking at the entire team and saying, here's where I see some weaknesses.
Yeah.
Because you got the wrong people in the wrong place.
I have so I have 3 stories. One is I have an accounting practice, 3 partners. Managing partner who owns 51% of the business, the other 2 own the 50. So collectively they can vote against her, right? Because the way the shares, actually she has 49 or 48, but anyway, the 2 can vote against her. But her and the woman that they're an accounting firm. Mary does the advisory, Nicole does all of the tax. I had to have what I call a come to Jesus, because I don't know what their religious affiliations are, and said, listen, we have to have an agreement. Mary, when you say you want to do something, Nicole gets to ask 3 questions. Nicole, when Mary says she wants to do something, you only get 3 questions.
I'm trying that with my husband.
Oh yeah, good luck with that. But so that rule, and then I also said, listen, you guys are wired so categorically different, just being in the same room irritates you. But one person is good at tax, the other's good at advisory, you leverage Colleen, you guys work through Colleen, you guys quit having one-on-ones. You can run this business without having to interact. And it brought harmony to us. So there was that one. The other one was a client that Brandon and I have done some work with, that when I took all of their surveys, it doesn't surprise you that the highly social CEO hired a team of highly social people. And so when I asked her, I said, first of all, I don't know how you guys pick lunch. Because every one of you's got an opinion, every one of you's got an idea. Not a single one of you is capable of stopping talking. So forget lunch.
They never go to lunch.
Yeah, but the other problem was, I said that, my concern is you're trying to get funding now. You might get funding, but you don't have any of these patterns or any of these patterns in your organization. You will blow that money before you take one step in moving this business forward. I don't think I can help you unless you fix these problems, because you're not going to be able to pay. And not a client, still a friend, but did acknowledge that that they are struggling to get processes in place and to do those kinds of things. And then I've had there are profiles that I just would prefer not to work with. You and I are we're not gonna be a good fit, because I'm a get her done, I'm a decisive, and you want to explore, and that's fine. But I've walked away, I've referred clients to other colleagues because you and I we won't be harmonious in how we evolve your company. And it's just not gonna be a good fit. I'm old enough now to know that I can hit that square peg. Yeah, so.
You should get into premarital counseling.
I did that one time, and I'll never do that again, where we took the couple surveys and we had wine. So you have to do all of the survey work before the wine opens, because 3 or 4 bottles in, people get a little bit more animated. I lose control.
It's really good personal life experience. It's not just
Yeah.
the workplace.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at this and I took pictures to send to my owner, because there is not to say, hey, you have a problem in your, your space, but there are some moments where you have 2 people that work in the same setting, and it's this, and maybe it's because one person's in a different location and they work different, and everyone works different in a different location. So once there's a fill-in spot available, next thing you know, you're bumping heads and you can't get things through.
There's no way to move forward because
There's no
they're,
way to move forward.
yep.
So it's like, okay, what if we just have 3 questions?
Dan, I thought of a new question to ask you after seeing this presentation a few times, which it's still good, by the way. Congratulations.
Yeah, it is
It's
really
good.
good.
It's a very good-
It's a very good presentation.
The question I had is, can you deliver, again, I put you on the spot, so I apologize, but can you deliver some type of metric around how often you see people in companies that may even have been there a while, tenured, right? That are drastically changing their job behaviors, right? Outside of their profile. Can you put a number on that of sorts? Like how much of an epidemic that is or not?
I see it way more rampant. Like when most of my clients are at a level where they have employees, right? They've got revenue. So I'm getting a chessboard full of chess pieces, not a blank chessboard to build, right? And so what I usually find is, and I tell them that for the next 3 months, we're going to measure everybody just every 3 months, because I need to figure out where my issues are while we're, backfilling better fills. Because so many people are in your organization that are still trying to fake it till they make it, and they're stressing out. And you're going to lose somebody who you've invested time and money in to get them to be advocates of the organization, but are in the wrong role. And so I definitely, there are a lot of people who do that, who are just, and I'm guilty of it in my own, where I know how I'm wired, and I've taken roles that are just, all right, I got to be a team player. Not in my DNA. But I need a paycheck, right? And so I do that until it just becomes a burning, before I build that head pressure and explode. So it is like on that ramp up. I just say, we are going to find those people. You've invested in them. They can be brand advocates. We can evaluate right person, wrong seat, and try to move them. But it's also why I also am a huge, do you have a 90-day employment rule? If there's not a 90-day probationary, we should talk about that, because you need a way to jettison and divest of bad people.
I have a question. How many of the profiles that you see, or the different aspects of each profile, do you see similarity from one generation to the next?
So I haven't had enough experience to speak to that directly. What I was hemming and hawing on was who we are and how we're wired is nature and nurture. And so I get myself in trouble sometimes because I'll ask, are you the youngest in a big family? And because sometimes you can see that. Are you, I hate to say, did you grow up in a single parent house? Are you the oldest child in a single parent house? Because that informs me on or an only child. I definitely can see where those things pop up. I've gotten myself in trouble where I've had profiles where this is way over here. They're so socially, driven that I'll just say, all right, be honest with me. What do you collect? You collect watches. You have multiple reading glasses. And I did this with my daughter, who is my daughter is that other profile, the Daredevil profile, and I'm like, all right, I already know what you collect. She has a bureau. The first three drawers are bikinis. She would never rewear a bikini. I'm like, yeah, that's just how. You collect stuff. Forget your jewelry. Forget your.
Yeah, hopefully it's not hair and fingernails. Right?
Yeah. Or I can look down, and if I know that those are an expensive pair of shoes, I'm like, yeah, that tracks with the brand. That you collect shoes, and I know it. Sometimes I don't say anything, but that's just again how they're wired. Or to some of these profiles, I can look at them and say, you played a tennis match and you won. You bicycled them 6-0, 6-0, and you're pissed off about your performance because you are so internally driven on your performance that you can win and still be mad that you didn't win well enough. You can shoot the greatest round of golf and be mad that you missed a putt on the 14th, right? That's those people that are so internally driven, they're so oblivious to the external factors. So.
This is pretty deep. Did you get a copy of this presentation?
No.
You have to take the survey.
Yeah. But if you take the survey,
Self-assess.
I know, it's like.
Mine is always like, which one of
my
my personalities is taking the test?
Wait. Okay. You mean which version of crazy showed up for class today?
Which one is showing up to take the test today?
Right.
But I'll share with Des the survey link. If you have,
The link and I'll send it out.
yeah, if you have an interest, we can have that conversation.
My husband has 2 businesses here, but they're all contracted employees, so I don't really know how that works.
Let me ask you something. The contracted employees contribute to his revenue generation?
Yes.
So then that's how it works. Let's make sure that he's contracted with the right people.
That's right.
That's the tricky part. We can talk offline about that.
Okay.
But, yeah, that's the tricky part, but this would be beneficial to maybe
Yeah.
figure that out. This is really good.
Happy to always have a conversation. We can look at that. We can, and so I'll send you, or Des will send out the link. Take it. You have to put your email in. So when I get your survey results, I'll shoot you an email. We can have a conversation. What was your question?
Well, it's not a question, so I was just going to share. I was in a partnership, a business partnership, and we spent a lot of money in an executive coaching session, a lot. And then when we walked away from
Said the
it,
financial planner.
yes, and it was very interesting, and there were a couple of things that were takeaways. One of them was that, so we used, I don't think it was Myers-Briggs, I think it was DISC. So we did the DISC, and it was a room full of maybe 50 executives in the room. And then out of the 50, maybe 2 or 3, and I was one of them, that fell under the 4 quadrant. You either have the driver, and my business partner fell in completely toward the driver. And then they went on to explain how many of you were in the 4 quadrant because you feel like you did something wrong.
Right.
But one of the things we came out and we were, so we used that program to hire our employees. And this is way in depth. I think we barely probably touched the surface just looking at the DISC. And it really works because we ended up hiring 2 employees, and one was the detail-oriented. And so she was the client onboarding process, and then the other one was our marketing person. And where the client, the detailed-oriented person lacked, the marketing person kind of filled
Picked
that
up.
gap. And so for 4 of us, the time we were together, it was a pretty good harmony.
High performing.
Yes. And so it really worked.
So,
Go
ahead.
So now I'm in a different situation, and I've yet to do that because I'm going to inherit an employee. So, and that's where I have some struggle because I feel like I need this person no matter what, but I need to bring other people in and then go through this process.
Can I help you before you do that? Can I try to help you? And then you can yell at me later if I.
No.
So, I've done disc personally. I've done a few different things. And it was a long time ago that I did disc, but I would say, hopefully this sets Dan up for success in his answer, but I would say my experience and working with Dan, particularly in this culture index tool, is that this goes, and you touched on this too, but it goes beyond just identifying who I am, right, and who those are around me. I think this gets into how well are they going to do the job? If you put them in the right environment to do the job, and it's clearly defined, and I'm supporting them through whatever means necessary, are they really wired to do this kind of work the right way, day in and day out? And I think that's what Culture Index brings, because it's one thing to just know how I'm kind of wired, right? It's valuable, don't get me wrong, and it's a completely different thing to say, I know how this person's wired, I know that how that's going to play into their day-to-day, and this is how I need to support them, and this is what I need to kick them in the rear end about, and this is what I need to be vulnerable with them when, I mean, you name it, but you're just setting them up for greater success in that respect. But
Yeah, that's perfect. What I'll tell you just for orientation, so DISC, DICS, we measure the same 4 primary psychological needs. So the difference is why I went Culture Index instead of using DISC in my practice is my survey is 2 questions, takes you less than, it's Culture Index, their survey, 2 questions, less than 8 minutes, and that's all you get. No, I target home services companies. No electrician is going to read an 18-page report to figure out how Brandon works. But he can look at this and say, takes direction, detail orientation, that's what I need. It's crayon simple. Yeah.
What's the baby blue and the purple dots at the bottom?
Yeah, that gets to be nuanced, that gets into the weeds. But to answer your question, we also look at how do we manage emotions in the workplace. A 0, 1, and 2 are highly emotional, wears their emotions on their sleeves. 8, 9, 10 are much more emotionally reserved, can remove themselves. A 10 is the kind of person that can lay off a family member if that's what the business needs.
Have you
Right.
dealt with someone that has a little bit of all of that to the point where it's like, hey, they can lay off a family member.
Yeah.
They know how to be emotionally supportive, but at the same time, they know how to adjust the access.
The woman that I said, I don't know how you guys do lunch together, I also said, listen, I just got to ask. If I ask people on your team, would they tell me that you have both the ability to be highly persuasive and very motivational and a complete hot mess in the same meeting? Because she was huge on the social and she was a 0 or a 1 on the emotional. She's like, oh yeah, I've dropped F-bombs and cried in my own meetings. I'm like, yeah, I get it, I know it. So that's what that one is. This one measures ingenuity, inventiveness.
That's your creative person, right?
I
Yeah.
just put that as all encompassing.
Yeah. You just call that Tuesday?
I just call that, Monday morning.
Yep.
Dan, have you ever had to call the authorities because you've seen a psychopathic profile?
I did have when I did a job behavior and the guy was normally here and jumped up here to a 10, I'm like, you need to talk to Caleb today. Something's going on in Caleb's world where a guy who's got a normal emotional range is all bottled up and it's a pressure cooker. Just ask him, what's going on in your world? No leading questions. They went and asked him and they're like, yeah, he lives with his in-laws and they drive him absolutely nuts. And he's just bottling it up. I'm like, all right, you got to give him an outlet for that because he's going to have a workplace incident that has nothing to do with work. So
I really like this. I had to leave early for a call, but you're going to get the contact information out?
Yeah.
yeah, so take the survey. We can have a conversation.
What size groups do you generally work with?
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, so Culture Index is where I spend 98% of my time. But this is a program for kind of stage 2 companies, 10 to 15 employees trying to get 15 to 30. And then I have other assessments that I use for really, really small that I don't like nearly as much as I like this, but they're effective. So.
Do you need to take your call?
Well then, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time.